My husband was diagnosed with cancer. The doctor said it was treatable, but the treatment would cost a fortune. I immediately called my mother, intending to borrow money from her. She agreed verbally, but behind my back, she secretly texted my husband, lying to him that I had cancer. I understood her implication. When I accused her of not trusting my husband, she said earnestly, "If your husband would do the same for you, then I'll lend you the money." Just as I was about to argue back, my husband suddenly texted me, "Let's get divorced." Reading those words, the slap of reality stung my face like fire. I had always cared for him so deeply. Even this cancer diagnosis came because I insisted on taking him for a checkup, worried about his health. And what did he do? Showed up in person, but left all the legwork to me. If I hadn't dragged him there, his cancer wouldn't have been caught early, leaving no chance for treatment. I thought my devotion would be repaid with lifelong companionship, but instead, I married an ungrateful wretch. Before I could even respond, my mother-in-law bombarded me with texts. "Come home right now. We need to talk. I always told you to stop eating takeout and cook properly, but you never listened. Now look, you've got cancer." Her relentless messages left me suffocating. When I returned home, disheartened, the whole family was already seated at the dining table, their faces grim with judgment. Father-in-law cleared his throat and said to me, "Come here, we're having a family meeting." Mother-in-law impatiently cut him off. "What's there to discuss? Just sign the divorce papers already. My son is still young. How can we let him be dragged down for life?" In that suffocating atmosphere, I turned to my husband and said coldly, "So this is how your family treats me?" He sighed, putting on an innocent face, and said, "Don't get angry yet. Can we just talk this through rationally?" I scoffed. Rationally? When I found out he had cancer, my first instinct was to go home and borrow money from my mother. But when he thought I had cancer, his first instinct was to divorce me. What rational discussion is left for us? Noticing my expression darken, he said earnestly, "You know, I once watched a documentary. Families fighting cancer suffer terribly. They struggle for so long, only to lose everything in the end." I asked, "What's your point?" As if trying to soften the blow, he hesitated before forcing out the words. "Wouldn't it be better to give the survivors more hope? We're all just trying to survive." I drew a sharp breath. As his wife, I'd seen every ugly side of him, yet at the moment he asked me to give up my life, he suddenly turned poetic. I asked, "Did it ever cross your mind to let me try treatment? You don't even know what it would cost." He didn't know the cost, but I did. The doctor said it would conservatively cost $400,000. I went straight home to borrow $200,000 from my mother, only to end up with this outcome. My husband didn't know how to respond, so my mother-in-law quickly interjected, "Oh, do we really need to know the cost? Hospitals are all scams. The moment you step in, they'll make you do all kinds of tests just to bleed you dry. Listen to me. You should see a traditional Chinese doctor. If you don't want a divorce, I can take you to a renowned folk healer." My father-in-law chimed in, "Exactly. You've been part of our family for so many years. If nothing else, you've earned our consideration. We wouldn't truly abandon you. So we have two options, either divorce or skip those fraudulent hospitals and go straight to a Chinese physician." Of course, I understood what they really meant. Did they actually care about traditional versus modern medicine? They just didn't want me getting tests, just some old practitioner taking my pulse and prescribing a bundle of herbs to take home. To them, this was their act of charity. I slumped weakly into a chair. The doctor already said we caught it early. Targeted therapy comes first, then we'll decide if surgery is needed. If all else fails, there's still organ transplantation. We have time and options. Suddenly, my husband asked, "But do you know about rejection risks?" I froze. We're nowhere near that stage. Why bring it up now? He said, "I just want you to understand first. Those who undergo organ transplants often don't live many more years. They spend fortunes just to buy themselves a few extra years, only to need new organs again. Can I be honest? I think people like that are selfish." I drew a sharp breath. Normally, he was a careless man who rarely considered consequences, but at this moment, he skipped right past targeted therapy and surgical removal, confronting the worst possible outcome directly. I asked, after all our years as husband and wife, are you really calling me selfish? He nodded. Yes, selfish. All I know is, if I were the one who got sick today, I wouldn't even tell you. I just quietly find a place to swallow a bottle of sleeping pills. I refuse to burden anyone. That's my duty as the family's pillar. Looking at his self-righteous expression, I finally understood. He was clever. After all, it wasn't that he couldn't learn. He'd simply channeled all his cleverness into these poisonous calculations. I smiled bitterly. Then, what do you expect me to do? My husband couldn't wait. He immediately pulled out a document from behind his back and handed it to me. At that moment, my heart froze completely. Whatever that document contained, I could already feel it. While I was on my way home, his entire family had gathered in the study, treating me like an enemy, debating what terms to include. I took the document and skimmed through it. Sure enough, it was an agreement drafted by his parents together. First, I must choose either traditional Chinese medicine or treatments covered by medical insurance. No out-of-pocket medications allowed. Second, the husband reserves the right to terminate my medical treatment should I succumb to illness. Considering his family's contributions, all my estate shall be transferred to him, with nothing left to my parents. Third, I am prohibited from using non-insurance medications without his knowledge or secretly incurring debts for my treatment. Violation grants him divorce rights, leaving me destitute and solely responsible for all debts. I anticipated a harsh agreement, but never imagined they'd strip me bare to the bone. I said, after all these years of marriage, this is how you treat me at my lowest point? My husband replied, love requires mutual sacrifice. Were I the one with cancer, I'd have swallowed sleeping pills and penned my will by now. Yet you lack this commitment. I asked, would you really take those pills? He said earnestly, absolutely. Never doubt my dedication to this family. If you care about us, sign this agreement. It benefits you too. I asked, how could this possibly benefit me? This predatory contract reeks of exploitation. Yet he has the audacity to claim it favors me. He continued, consider this. I'm willing to care for you despite your cancer, if recovery fails. As an only child, your parents will need support. I vow to care for them in your stead. I stared at him icily, a man who'd abandon his wife. How could I trust him with my aging parents? No doubt, he's eyeing my family's inheritance. Exactly, my mother-in-law chimed in hastily. You shouldn't always think only of yourself. They say a dying man speaks from the heart. You ought to consider those around you. Your priority should be us and your parents. Don't be so selfish. To be honest, I'd always respected my mother-in-law, but at that moment, I knew all pretense had been stripped away. So I didn't bother sparing her feelings. I said bluntly, is wanting to stay alive really such a selfish act? My husband interjected anxiously, of course it's selfish. If you recklessly drain our savings on treatments, leaving me saddled with lifelong debt, and then you die, what becomes of me? I'm still young. I shot him a frigid glance. Only now did I realize, when love fades, every gesture from that person becomes intolerable. He'd always had this habit of shouting when agitated. I used to think it was just impulsive temper masking a kind heart. I was wrong. Now it just made me sick. Let's skip the agreements, I said. We're getting divorced. He nodded and immediately produced a pre-prepared divorce settlement. I wasn't surprised. He'd even gotten this ready. Who knew how much that family had plotted behind my back? The divorce terms were simple. He kept the house. We split the savings, and each took our personal belongings. He said, this is the fairest way to divorce. The house was bought by my family to begin with. Even though your name is on the deed, the new marriage law states that whoever paid for the property owns it. I replied, true, you bought the house, but what you bought was an empty shell. I paid for all the renovations. At least refund me the 200,000 yuan I spent on the interior. My husband scoffed. 200,000. You're not even accounting for depreciation. Before he could finish, my mother-in-law nudged him sharply into silence. Then she shrugged and said to me, fine, tear out all the renovations and take them with you. I never liked this decor anyway. I drew a sharp breath. I couldn't fathom how vile this family could become, now resorting to outright shamelessness. Suggesting I dismantle the renovations was beyond contemptible. My father-in-law and husband, slower on the uptake, still hadn't grasped her implication. The old man blurted, "Why let her remove them? We're perfectly comfortable as is." Rolling her eyes, my mother-in-law hissed, "Just let her try. She's got cancer now." Pinching every penny till it screams. Hiring a demolition crew would cost tens of thousands. Does she have that kind of money to spare? Suddenly enlightened, my father-in-law nodded at me. "Go ahead and take the renovations, if you can afford to." Turning to my husband, I whispered, "So this is your family's final answer?" After a pause, he muttered, "I'll defer to Mom. The down payment was their money after all." I smiled bitterly and said, "Marrying you was the greatest regret of my life." He retorted, "Were even then. You were never any saint yourself. All you ever wanted was for us to sacrifice everything for your illness. In the end, you'd either drag on miserably for a few more years or die early, leaving the rest of us broken." I said, "You know what? If it were you who fell ill, I'd borrow money from my family to save you." He snapped, "Stop with the hypotheticals. My parents worked hard for their money. They raised me. Why should I burden them for your sake? Should I abandon filial duty my whole life?" I stared coldly at him, almost amused. By now, I didn't believe a word he said. I knew a man who could abandon his innocent wife would someday abandon his parents too. Sighing, I picked up my phone and dialed the renovation crew. Since I'd paid for the home renovations originally, I'd kept their contact. When they answered, I said, "Come over. Tear everything down." Their faces twisted in shock. His father shouted, "You're actually calling them to demolish it? Have you lost your mind?" His mother hastily restrained him, saying, "Calm down. She's just trying to scare us." My father-in-law panicked and urgently told my husband, "Quick, talk to her. If she really tears down the renovation, where will we live?" My husband looked at me with utter disappointment and said, You won't even give me this last gift?" That simple sentence nearly made me vomit. I replied, "What I'm willing to give, you may take. What I refuse, you'll never have." He finally sighed and said, "You're still the same, always letting emotions rule. Right when you need money most, you'd rather destroy us both just to spite me. If not for this selfish flaw of yours, I wouldn't have divorced you." I shook my head. Enough with the gaslighting. Don't drape your shamelessness over me like some oversized cloak. My spine isn't strong enough to carry that weight. My mother-in-law hissed through clenched teeth, "I know your game. This renovation cost 200,000 yuan. Having it demolished is just theater. You're trying to extort more money from us. Once the crew arrives, you'll demand payment to spare it." Hearing this, my husband gasped in surprise. "Mom, is that really what she's thinking?" His mother snapped, "Can't you see it? I always knew you married a shrewd woman. She's playing all these little mind games on us." At that moment, my husband's emotions began spiraling out of control. He frantically said to me, "How could you be so cruel? We loved each other once. I didn't want to abandon you. I just wanted an ordinary, happy life. What's wrong with that?" My mother-in-law lamented bitterly. "Don't bother appealing to her emotions. She has none. She only thinks of herself. Let's cut to the chase. How much to buy out this renovation? It's already worn out. At most, we'll pay 100,000 yuan." I shook my head and said, "No deal. You said I could dismantle and take it away. So I will." My mother-in-law snapped, "What do you mean, no deal? You're just holding out for more money. How much do you actually want?" After a moment's thought, I replied, "Since you're asking me to name a price, 200,000 yuan." My father-in-law exploded. "Bullshit. The renovation only cost 200,000 back then, and now it's old. You think we're idiots?" My husband said in stunned disbelief, "I used to feel guilty, but now I see divorcing you as the right call. You're already trying to extort money from my family. If this went on, you'd bleed us dry." I said coldly. I simply don't think your family deserves my money. Every cent I spent here, I want back. My father-in-law fretted to his wife. What do we do? Do we really pay her 200,000? If she dismantles it, we'll have nowhere to sleep tonight. My mother-in-law's expression twisted into something venomous. She pointed her finger at my nose and snapped. Go ahead, tear it down. You think I don't know how to bargain? Let me make this clear. If you so much as swing that hammer, I won't even pay you 100,000. I couldn't care less about my mother-in-law's threats. I started packing right away and told my husband to get ready for our divorce appointment at the civil affairs office. Outside, my mother-in-law kept ranting, insisting I was just trying to scare her. She deliberately clattered the dishes with exaggerated force, sneering, "You deserve this illness. It's divine retribution for your rotten character." I replied calmly, "At least I've got more decency than your family, unlike your son, who abandoned his wife without a second thought." She scoffed. "Then why did heaven's punishment land on you? My son will live to 100 while you're wasting away." I sighed deeply. Her son wouldn't see old age. If my husband wasn't bluffing, he'd soon swallow a bottle of sleeping pills to end it all. Truth be told, if he actually went through with it, I'd believe every word he'd said. I'd have wronged him. I'd respect him as a man of his word. It'd be my fault for misjudging him. He'd have proven himself honorable through and through. But if he didn't, then he'd be the vilest hypocrite. All high-minded talk, but rotten to the core. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I saw the renovation crew had arrived. The foreman stood at the doorstep with his workers, looking puzzled. "Miss," he said, "is there something about my work you're unhappy with? Why tear it all down when it's perfectly fine?" I replied offhandedly, "No complaints. I just feel like tearing it down." My mother-in-law sat at the dining table, sneering, still putting on an act. "I see. Go ahead and tear it down. Please, I beg you, hurry up." Curious, the foreman stepped inside for a look while my mother-in-law leisurely brewed herself a cup of hot tea. After a moment, the foreman turned to me. "Miss, if you want all this work demolished, it'll cost around 30,000. My mother-in-law took a sip of tea and remarked with mocking sweetness, "Oh my, 30,000. That's enough for a full medical checkup. Are you really willing to spend that much now?" My husband and the others lurked behind her, letting her handle the negotiations, even giving her secret thumbs-ups. She spat a tea leaf back into her cup and drawled, "How about this? After all these years living together, let's both compromise. I'll name a figure." Before she could finish, I cut in, "Just tear it down. Now, I've got an appointment at the civil affairs office." The foreman hesitated, then whispered, "Miss, are you sure? We'll need a signed contract before we can start." I signed the renovation contract without hesitation, while my mother-in-law clicked her tongue beside me, still putting on an act. "Are we? Fine, I'll give you our final offer. 120,000 yuan. That's our absolute bottom line. You've pushed far enough. Drop the theatrics." I shot a glance at the contractor and said, "What are you waiting for?" At this, the contractor hastily grabbed his sledgehammer. Now flustered, my mother-in-law blurted, "Let me make this clear. The moment that hammer strikes, you won't get a single cent from me." Truth be told, I faced two choices at this moment. Option 1, take back the 120,000 yuan, curse my own poor judgment, and salvage what I could. Option 2, kick my husband when he's down, leave him, battling cancer, without even a roof over his head. So I chose option 2. Money can be earned again, but some grudges, if left unsettled, they'd haunt me forever. With a calm smash it, the contractor swung the sledgehammer full force into the wall. A thunderous crash later, a gaping hole appeared. Terrified, my mother-in-law scrambled to the wreckage, wailing, "Stop, you're insane. You're dying yourself, yet won't let us live in peace. You want us all to perish together." All her earlier defiance vanished. Clutching her chest at the sight of the demolished wall, she stomped in helpless fury. The foreman asked me nervously, "Sis, what should we do now?" I replied, "With so many of you here, Surely you won't be stopped by some old woman? The foreman immediately grasped my meaning. Knowing I'd paid for all the renovations, he quickly rallied his crew to start smashing everything. Floors, walls, ceilings, bathrooms. They reduced it all to rubble. My husband stood frozen, stunned by the violent scene. He muttered numbly, "You crazy bitch. Even if you beg me to reconcile later, I'll never live with you again." His parents completely lost control. They desperately tried stopping the workers, but there were too many. For every spot they protected, another was being destroyed before their helpless eyes. Smiling at my husband, I said, "Now our divorce settlement is settled. Let's head straight to the civil affairs office." His mother wailed, "Divorce her. Do it now. I can't spend another day with this daughter-in-law." My husband took a deep breath before growling through clenched teeth. "Fine, let's end this marriage today. Just don't come crawling to me when you're dying someday." I glanced at him, revealing his cancer diagnosis now would have been satisfying, but I wasn't that foolish. I'd seen through my mother-in-law's type. If I revealed the diagnosis now, remember there's a 30-day cooling-off period for divorce. She'd undoubtedly schemed to have her son borrow astronomical sums under the pretense of medical treatment. Under our country's laws, spouses have mutual support obligations. The court would absolutely rule that I shoulder half those debts. If I produced those test results before the cooling-off period ended, they'd latch onto me like parasites, enjoying half-price healthcare on my dime. Marrying the wrong man didn't mean I had to play the fool. I'd make this bastard plummet straight into hell. I went straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau with my husband to file for divorce, initiating the cooling-off period. As we exited, my husband glared viciously and spat. "I can't wait to see you kneeling before me someday, begging for my help. When that day comes, I'll kick you aside and watch you crawl away." I gave him a sidelong glance and replied coolly, "I look forward to that day myself." Truthfully, I'd worried my husband might discover his test results during the coming month and frantically withdraw the divorce petition. But to my surprise, my mother-in-law made an unexpected move. She actually made my husband quit his job and flee with the entire family. I later learned she feared I'd retract the divorce, so they bolted, hoping to outlast the cooling-off period. She even boasted to others that if I withdrew the divorce petition, they'd simply live elsewhere indefinitely, content to be deadbeats until my illness claimed me. This ultimatum from my mother-in-law was why my husband never returned to the hospital for his physical exam results. The mandatory divorce cooling-off period finally ended. That day, I held the divorce certificate in my hands at last. After getting his copy, my husband waved it before my face and sneered, "From now on, even if you die from illness, it's none of my concern." As he turned to leave, I suddenly said, "Wait, I have something for you." His mother stood beside him, venom dripping from her words. "What could you possibly gift now? The divorce is final. Still trying to curry favor? Thank goodness I took him away for a month. Or you might have actually withdrawn the petition." Unfazed, I handed him my phone. "What's this?" he demanded. "Giving me your phone now?" I shook my head. "Your digital lab report. The results came in weeks ago, but you fled town before collecting them." He scoffed, suddenly concerned about my health. Spare me the devoted wife act. It turns my stomach. "Just look," I insisted. He took the phone. The sneer on his face hardened into something else entirely. His mother peered over his shoulder, baffled. "What does it say?" My husband set down his phone, murmuring dazedly, "What's going on? How could I have cancer?" I answered truthfully, "We found out you had cancer a month ago. I went home to borrow money from my mom for your treatment, but she doubted you were worth relying on, so she lied to you. Turns out her gamble paid off." My mother-in-law panicked, snatching the phone to scrutinize the report. "This can't be right," she stammered. "Wasn't it you who had cancer? How did it suddenly become my son?" I said coolly, "You've been hiding out for a month. That cancer's probably gotten worse. Consider this a final kindness between spouses." My husband grabbed my arm in desperation. "No, you can't leave. Why didn't you tell me clearly back then?" "I take it back. I won't divorce you. Stay." I shook off his hand. "We're already divorced. Don't touch me," I said icily. His mother wailed. "How could you divorce him when he's sick? You should be taking care of him." She frantically grabbed the divorce certificate and shoved it at the clerk. "They're not getting divorced anymore. Nullify it right now." The clerk, finally grasping the absurdity, rolled his eyes. "Where was this energy during the cooling off period? Did you think divorce was some kind of joke?" I tucked away the divorce papers and turned to leave, but my mother-in-law quickly blocked my path. She broke down, crying, "My son is sick, and you kept it from him. You made him waste precious time." My husband stood frozen, his face pale with shock. I replied coolly, "This was your son's own medical report. If he didn't bother to collect it, how is that my fault? And where were you for the past month? Oh, right, you took him away to avoid being burdened if I turned out to be sick." She wailed loudly. "How could you be so heartless, abandoning your husband when he's ill?" Her sobs were theatrical, as if she wanted to draw a crowd and shame me publicly. But our earlier argument hadn't been quiet either. Everyone already understood the situation. Now, the onlookers couldn't hold back their outrage. "You're the shameless one," someone shouted. "You dragged your son away for a month because you thought your daughter-in-law was sick. You flee for divorce when the wife falls ill, but demand she returns to nurse your son? The hypocrisy is disgusting." Another voice added, flustered. My mother-in-law yelled, "It's not the same thing at all." The brazen double standard made the entire room gasp in disbelief. My husband stammered, "Am I really sick? What exactly did the doctor say?" I replied, "I've already told you. Targeted therapy first, then surgery if needed, an organ transplant as a last resort, but you've delayed too long." He quickly said, "Right, I can start with targeted therapy. How exactly did the doctor explain it? Tell me everything again, word for word." I said in disbelief, "This doesn't sound like you." He asked, "What do you mean?" I countered, "You were the one who said if you ever got sick, you just swallow a bottle of sleeping pills and slip away quietly, because you wouldn't burden this family." My husband broke down, "But this family can't survive without me. The greatest unfilial act is letting white-haired parents bury their child. How could I make my parents watch me die?" I glared at him in disgust. This man was truly repulsive, no matter how selfish his actions. He'd always conjure up some noble justification. He painted himself as a martyr before. Now, his excuses were endless. I snapped, "Stop talking to me. Every word from you makes me sick. I've never met anyone as despicable as you." As I turned to leave, he grabbed my hand again. I jerked away. "What more do you want?" What left me utterly incredulous was how he managed to put on a mask of sincerity as he said, "I'm sorry. I'd never been through anything like this before, so I didn't understand what you were feeling back then. Now that it's happening to me, I finally get it. I truly realize how wrong I was. Can we start over?" Watching him sugarcoat himself yet again made me nauseous. But then my mother-in-law chimed in urgently, "Yes, it's only now that we're in this situation ourselves that we understand how much you suffered. I sincerely apologize. Please don't leave my son. You two used to love each other so much." I said, "No, just looking at you makes me sick." My husband broke down. "Do I need to kneel before you for forgiveness?" I replied, "I don't know. Why don't you try it and see?" With a thud, he actually dropped to his knees, his face twisted in fear as he begged, "Please don't leave me. I need you now more than ever." Seeing her son kneel, my mother-in-law hastily followed suit, groveling before me. Even I, your elder, am kneeling now. Have mercy on an old woman. I watched them kneel before me, then smiled and said, "Now I know for sure, your kneeling changes nothing." In an instant, my husband's face contorted with rage. Humiliation flashed across his features as he roared, "I knelt for you." Then, to my shock, he lunged at me, fists clenched like a man ready to strike. However, our commotion had already drawn the attention of the security guards present. The moment he lunged forward, the guards pinned him roughly to the ground, shouting, "What the hell are you trying to do? You think you can assault someone here?" My husband lay crushed against the floor, howling impotently at me, a pitiful sight if there ever was one. He screamed hysterically, "Why won't you save me? I just want to live. What's so wrong about that?" kneeling down to meet his gaze. I said calmly, "And I just want an ordinary life. Did you know that? After your referral, I watched those documentaries too. Cancer families endure so much. I don't want to be dragged down by you. Is that so unreasonable?" These were the very words he'd once said to me. Yet now that the tables had turned, he trembled with rage, shrieking at me nonstop. My mother-in-law collapsed in helpless sobs. Having no patience left for this family, I turned and walked out of the civil affairs office. But things didn't end there. I'd previously added the hospital staff on WeChat while arranging his treatment. Now, one of them informed me he'd returned for another checkup. His condition had worsened significantly. Turns out, during that month, he'd fled out of town, unemployed and convinced he'd sacrificed enough for the family. He'd treated himself to a month-long reward. He'd spent those 30 days drowning in debauchery. His mother saw no issue. Her poor overworked son deserved this indulgence. Over the past month, copious amounts of alcohol and sleepless nights had thoroughly ravaged his body. A month ago, the doctors had still held considerable hope. A month later, they could only shake their heads and tell him bluntly to go home and arrange his affairs. Even if he waited for an organ transplant now, it would likely be too late. Throughout that month, his body had faltered repeatedly, but because he kept drinking and staying up late, he dismissed it as self-inflicted exhaustion, thinking rest would fix it, until he missed his last window for treatment. Because of this, he came to me again. That day, as I stepped out to take out the trash, I found him lurking by my building. The moment he saw me, he rushed over and pleaded, "I don't expect your forgiveness, but could you lend me some money?" I stared coldly as he continued, "The domestic waiting list is hopeless, but I've heard paying abroad can fast-track a transplant. My family already sold our home, but it's not enough." I sighed. "So this is how far your selfishness goes. Draining your savings, selling your home, drowning in debt, just to cling to a few more years. You never mentioned this before." He frantically replied, "I just want to live. I'm still young. There's so much I haven't done." I said, "Have you thought about your parents? If you burn through everything now and still die, what happens to them?" "I'm dying anyway," he said agitatedly. "Why should I care about anyone else?" I let out a cold laugh. His ugly true colors were on full display now, a far cry from his earlier pretense of giving me earnest advice. After some thought, I said, "My parents would never let me lend you money, but since we loved each other once, how about this? Come to our old meeting spot in the park at 3 a.m. tonight. I'll give you cash there." He nodded repeatedly, eyes gleaming with excitement. I smiled at him before heading upstairs. When I got home, Mom asked if I'd taken out the trash. "Already done," I said. "Let's just focus on moving." That's right, we were moving out. It was Mom's decision. She believed my husband was spineless and would likely become a lifelong leech. Had to admit, Mom was razor sharp. She always saw through people. As the moving truck pulled away, I thought about that 3 a.m. rendezvous. Not my problem. The whole thing had been a setup. That night, I slept soundly in my new bed. When I woke, my phone was flooded with texts from him. "Where are you? I don't see you. I've waited forever. Are you playing games with me?" Father-in-law cleared his throat and said to me, "Come here. We're having a family meeting." Chuckling at the messages, I blocked his number without hesitation. Later, I heard they'd exhausted their savings, lost their home, and accumulated mountains of debt, all without saving her husband's life. After his death, creditors hounded them. When my in-laws refused to repay, with shameless defiance, my father-in-law had his leg broken, and my mother-in-law lost her mind completely. Sometimes friends send me videos, footage of my deranged mother-in-law standing outside the civil affairs office, screaming about not wanting a divorce, while my crippled father-in-law begs beside her in tattered clothes. After watching those videos, I text my friend, "Do me a favor, kick that cripple's good leg a few times." I was kind once. I loved sincerely once, but I fed my sincerity to dogs. My only advice to the world is this: be kinder to yourselves. Don't foolishly sacrifice for hollow self-satisfaction. Some people aren't worth your devotion. Some men will always trade their devoted wives for younger women. Some women will cuckold their most devoted husbands. This isn't marriage-phobic ranting, just a warning to keep an escape route when you're pouring your soul into someone else's hands.